Welcome to the grammar section. Today we are going to learn some figures based on resemblance. Number 1. Simile. A simile is the clear statement of some point of resemblance imagined or thought of to exist between two different objects or events. It is introduced by some words for drawing attention to the likeness. The words commonly used for this purpose are as so, or like. Another important thing to note about it is that in simile and in all other figures based upon resemblance, the comparison is not between things of the same kind, but between things of different kinds. Thus, there is no figure if we compare a camel with a dromedary, because a dromedary is a type of camel that lives in the desert. But there is a figure when we compare it with a ship and call it the ship of the desert. Again, there is no simile if we compare Brooke with Cicero, Napoleon with Alexander, or the Russian Empire with the Roman Empire. There is nothing figurative about them, as these are all good parallels and objects of the same kind. As Brooke and Cicero were both statesmen, Napoleon and Alexander were both military leaders, and the cultures of the Russian Empire and the Roman Empire are nearly same. Some examples of simile are: number 1. My love is like a red rose by Robert Burns. Number 2. Errors like straws upon the surface flow. He that would search for pearls must dive below by Dryden. Here, errors are compared to straws, which are the objects of different kinds. Number 3. And ice mast high came floating by, as green as emerald by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. In this example, ice is compared to an emerald, which are also the objects of different kinds. From the above examples, it will be seen that a simile is introduced by some words such as like, as so, which draw attention to the likeness. But this is not necessary. All that is necessary to the simile is that both sides of the comparison shall be clearly stated. For example, the repose of repletion may not be a heroic attitude to a great nation like the English, but even a lion sleeps after a full meal. Here, the English is compared to a lion, stating the similar features of both without using the words such as like, as, or as so. The meaning of this example is that the state of having full satisfaction may not be a heroic attitude for a country, because even a lion sleeps after getting its full meal. Now, see another figure of speech metaphor. A metaphor is a potential or implied simile, that is, it suggests something in an indirect way or without actually saying it. In other words, a metaphor is a figure of speech in which two persons or things are compared without using the words such as like or as. Another important thing to note is that in a simile, both sides of the comparison are clearly stated, whereas in a metaphor, only one side is stated but not the other. For example, number 1, he curbs his passion. Here, the passion of the man is compared to a restless horse. This is an example of metaphor, as the passion of the man is stated but not the restless horse. Similarly, in example number 2, he erupted in anger. The man is compared to a volcano. Here also, only one part of the comparison, that is, the man is stated, not the volcano. And if both sides of the comparison were to be given, this is how the simile would be expressed. For example, first see noun as metaphors. A noun is a metaphor when it is used to compare two things that are not related, or a noun metaphor is a figure of speech in which two things are compared using a noun. For example, number 1, our eldest son is the star of the family. Here, the brightest member of the family is compared to a star. Number 2, he is now in the sunset of his days. Here, the last stage or old age of a person's life is compared to sunset. Number 3, the news you bring is a dagger to me. In this example, the news is compared to a dagger. Next, we have adjectives as metaphors. An adjective is a metaphor when it is used to compare two things that are not related, or an adjective metaphor is a figure of speech in which two things are compared using an adjective. For example, number 1, a golden harvest. Here, the wealth and prosperity of a person is compared to gold. Number 2, a fiery temper. Here, the intense emotion or passion of a person is compared to fire. Number 3, a stormy discussion. In this example, angry or emotional outburst of a person is compared to a storm. At last, we have verbs as metaphor. A verb is a metaphor when the action of the verb is used to compare two things that are not related, or a verb metaphor is a figure of speech in which two things are compared using a verb. For example, number 1, a new thought has certainly struck me. Here, the sudden appearance of thought in one's mind is compared to the hitting of something suddenly. Number 2, he was fond of blowing his own trumpet. Here, the habit of praising oneself is compared to the playing of own trumpet. Number 3, the town was stormed after a long siege. In this last example, the soldiers' attack is compared to a storm.